everybody. Welcome back. I'm getting over something, so you might hear a little coughing, so leave it at that. But we are here today to go ahead and get started with your division PLP. You have two kinds. You have your division and you have your site-based. So this is partial fulfillment of the division-based, 4 hours of PLP. The focus of our division PLP this year is balanced assessment. And so we've kind of broken that down into a couple different areas that we're going to, 2 of which we'll touch on today. So our intentions today are to explore the relationships among and between formative assessment, feedback, and performance assessment. And those are the 3 areas of focus under the umbrella of balanced assessment that's the district focus. We're going to study and discuss the research around assessment, and then we're going to identify some opportunities within our practice to embed formative assessment, feedback, and then performance assessment. So, a lot on the plate for today. We'll know that we're successful when we're able to develop a rationale for incorporating formative assessment, feedback, and performance assessment, determine some starting points and next steps, depending on where we are, and then both us and our students are engaged in a cycle of continuous growth. So, just to show you where this fits in terms of our division initiatives, I'll give you a second to look that over. This is from Compass 2020. So we're really living here in these 2 strategies today, in our work today. Refining and expanding our responses to student need, and then continuing to implement our balanced assessment system. So, formative assessment, what is it? What are your thoughts on formative assessment, just generally speaking? Any volunteers sort of step out there and define and describe formative assessment?
Is it like an exit ticket or small group observation, anecdotal note, that kind of thing?
Anyone else?
Drive instruction.
Drive instruction.
Like a pit stop.
It's a what?
A pit stop.
Like a pit stop?
Yeah. Basically,
Explore that analogy further.
for me, I look at it as it's a place where I stop or slow down long enough to see what I really need to do, where I really need to go.
Very nice. Hold on to that because you're going to need that analogy.
I was going to say, just a quick check to see along the way which students have mastered the objectives and who has not.
Absolutely. Who has it? Who doesn't? Or even more precisely, where they are on the continuum of mastery. Okay. So formative assessment does exactly what you said. It informs your instruction. But it's really more than a thing or an event or a task. Formative assessment is a system. It's a system, just like any other system. It has its moving parts. It has sort of an interdependence. The moving parts are dependent upon each other. Formative assessment is a belief system, in addition to being a functioning system. So we have to think about formative assessment as sort of a philosophy. We want to be engaged in a constant cycle of formative assessment, because the information that we glean from those assessments or those tickets and quizzes and all those sorts of things move our instruction forward. So feedback, what is feedback? What does that mean? That's not a bad word.
Not wrong.
No, no.
But yeah. It's a more critical way of really
And who benefits from the feedback?
you if you take
The
it.
recipient or the giver or the receiver?
Should be both.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. Especially in our work, because when we're giving feedback, in order to give feedback, we must have identified a need, which informs our instruction. So that feedback cycle is vital too. We want to make sure that feedback is, and you use the word, or I think you said critical eye or critical examination. We're not talking about criticism. We're talking about looking very closely and examining very closely based on a set of criteria and giving information to move our students forward, or gleaning information to move our instructors forward. Performance assessment, that's biggie. What is performance assessment? See hands going up, question mark. Best guess, what do you think it is?
When students are given like a task or I don't, so and they have to perform on.
Yeah,
I mean,
in the simplest terms, that's exactly what it is. When students are given a task or an opportunity to do the things that you've asked them to learn how to do in an authentic context. So all the stuff and the lessons that you've taught are for a purpose, and it's not just to finish the assignment that comes at the end of that instruction. It's so that they can transfer that knowledge into authentic context. And a performance assessment allows us to sort of stand on the sidelines and watch that application, watch that transfer and application. That's performance assessment. It's an authentic application of skills and strategies that have been taught. It's really that simple, and it's really that complex at the same time. So, on your table you have a little note taker. I want you to create a graphic or an analogy that represents, in your mind, the relationship between formative assessment, feedback, and performance assessment. You can work together as a table. So create a graphic or an analogy that represents that relationship.
You haven't been here long enough to start taking things from people.
She did, I heard it with my own ears.
There are a couple of extras up here if anyone needs them.
Oh, you can, okay. I like that, she said,
or she can stuff.
That was really fast. Look how fast you guys are with it. I know.
This is lap number.
I like that too.
Back on the road.
I know. We're so blessed.
We're not doing it as regular back. Our train.
That's why I didn't want to ask
Yeah, yeah. Is there a musical one in there somewhere?
All right. What we're gonna do now is share out a few, having volunteers who'd like to share their analogy or their graphics. Any volunteers? Who would you like to do volunteers?
It really is. Yeah, but don't laugh when you do about
I'll volunteer. We came up with the idea of a Ferris wheel, that it just is kind of continuous and it keeps happening. We talked about how some kids get off after one ride and some kids get multiple rides on the Ferris wheel. And then when it came for the performance assessment, we said, well, on the Ferris wheel, what would be proof of the performance assessment? It would be when they would be able to drive the Ferris wheel themselves. They would be able to make that Ferris wheel go around by using what they know.
Very nice, thank you. Any other volunteers? We have another volunteer?
We stay with the race car theme, the pit stop. It's a track, there's a starting point and an ending point, and some cars get there a lot faster. The pit stops basically let you know what's going on right or what's going on wrong. If it's going right, you gas them up and keep them going. If it's going wrong, you fix the flats.
One more. Yes.
Okay, we thought of it as like a performance literally on stage. And so you have tryouts to see what their talents are. And some might say they want to sing a song, but they don't really have a very good voice. So you encourage them to sing in the choir, and you make sure that they dance because they're very good at dancing. And as they're going along, you're giving them feedback, and you start one at a time, and then you have a little scene, and then you have a dress rehearsal, then you have the big day.
Wow. Wow. I love that because you built in scaffolding. You have the choir option. Yes.
There's always the stage dance.
But you need everyone.
In order for that performance to be so, almost in every example, we heard some sort of physical, repeating, sort of relationship. It's very difficult to pull these things apart. It's hard to sort of identify one piece of this system versus the other because they're so similar and dissimilar at the same time. Feedback, formative assessment, and performance assessment. So I'm going to give you some little cards, and they have different kinds of assessment. And I want you to, at your table, sort these cards into categories, two categories, summative and formative. We're talking about different kinds of assessment. So when you get your cards, you can go ahead and spread them out and try to separate them into two categories, summative and formative. I thought this was going to be a grade level table, so we may need to rearrange a little bit. I'm not sure I have enough for every single thing.
How do you feel about the cards? That's all I and then actually, I will be the caller. Brooke, what's the board you up? So much going to get for your job. We're assessing you. Just keep it. Formative, summative, or
This is after
This one's actually.
Well, it depends when you do it. And it's always more than
Learning style.
I would think that would go. I would think
For us, it's performance. For us,
three tasks, if they do well enough, you're not even proposed to right. That's how I would figure out one part.
Did you sneak that one in there?
IPT is from Alright, so I see all kinds of great maybe we can develop a common definition of these.
4 ways to hop.
And if they don't do well,
The experts. If you do, that's fine.
except for that one.
No, we're good. Ready? Yep.
Alright, so the experts define assessment, define summative assessment as assessment that provides evidence of student achievement for the purpose of making a judgment about student competence or program effectiveness. Think about the true function of the SOL to help us refine our instruction. It kind of has morphed into something, you know, we kind of use it for multiple purposes now, but true summative assessment assesses student competency or program effectiveness. So think about that as a definition of summative or description. Formative and informal processes teachers and students use to gather evidence for the purpose of improving learning. So think about what you decided in terms of your grouping and reassess. Look at your lists or your categories and see if what you put in each fits those descriptors. You can shift it around if you need to, or not. Or not.
We're still great, we're perfect.
I don't know. Roland said fifth grade is.
So I know as teachers we want to know the right answer, and the right answer is it depends on the why. It depends on the why. Now there are a couple that are pretty clearly some of them form. I think SAT was one, and then learning style profile I think was the other that was pretty clearly formative to inform instruction. And then SAT is a terminal exam. There's nothing. No one does anything with that data except pigeonhole. Other than that, it doesn't really inform the instruction. So, other than those few exceptions, depending on your purpose, just about each of those assessments could be summative or formative, depending on how you plan to use that data. Is it to identify a level of competency or proficiency at a moment in time, which is how we sort of use assessments for report card purposes? Or is it to inform instruction and make sure we push our students further along and also revise and refine our instruction? So you really have to think about the purpose. Summative is assessment of learning. Formative is assessment for learning. So that's something that we, just more reminder. So I'm gonna, if you would kind of scoop those together and flip them together, I'll get them out of your way. I'm gonna give you just a short article on assessment. It's called Using Common Formative Assessments to Check for Understanding. What's this idea of common assessment? How would you define that? Common assessment. I know we hear it all the time, but we don't really talk about what it actually means.
Yeah, we
What does
prefer.
that mean? What's that?
Oh, I was talking to Roland about that.
What about what you said?
I believe you. I believe you.
No,
I was on topic.
How would you define or describe common assessments?
We were saying that an assessment that we give for the grade level or at, like across that grade level across the district.
Okay. For the purpose of what?
Program.
Determining a level of
Determining competency and program effectiveness. The beauty of the common assessment is that it gives us sort of a bar. We know what's been taught. We know what the expectation is on the assessment. And we can truly assess both our student competency or proficiency and our instruction. Think about the times when you implemented a common assessment, you come back to that table, you look at that student work, and you can say, well, gosh, the kids in this room did really well on this part. My kids not so much. It's the same objective. We relatively have relatively the same kind of kid in our classroom. What's the difference? Well, that's an instructional issue, and that's a time when we can grow each other. You can also say, across the grade level, this thing didn't go well. So what do we need to do to address it? Adjust our instruction, support the kids more, whatever we have to do. Think about the purposes and the context of the assessment. So you have the article. I'm going to do a little bit of annotating here. I want you to, the article has 5 steps in a protocol. It's a process described for a common assessment. I want you to circle the who. Who's doing the stuff in each of those steps? And then underline the what. What are they doing at each of those points? And then in the margins, just write down why you think that's an important thing, or you think that is an important part of the process. We'll take about 5 minutes to do that. It is. Okay.
What do? They meet on a regular basis, and then
Who gets fired? Let's at least look. Meet the demand. Would you like to meet so that you can take this already?
Please handle that.
Right, how to manipulate it, that's all.
True. So we apply for one step. Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah.
Have you watched anything, the three of us in the picture?
Right.
The big guys, this is trying to keep us all.
Like you. About 2 more minutes? 2 weeks. Is that, do we need more? Yeah, just a little bit. We'll check back in 2 minutes.
You know what I mean? Start fractions, we don't know how to do it. Multiplication, you know,
Will one more minute be enough? One more minute.